Let's take a look at how rhythms relate to each other through subdivision. Let's say I have a long sound. I'm going to call it a whole sound and notate it as a whole note. If I divide that sound into two halves, I'll get two sounds that are half the length of the original whole sound, or two half notes. Divide those in half and I get quarter notes. I can do this continually down to the 8th note, 16th note, and so on through 32nd notes and 64th notes. Make a note of how these rhythms subdivide at each level. For example, a half note can subdivide into 4 8th notes, and a quarter note can subdivide into 4 16th notes. I can also use dotted rhythm. A dot adds half the value of the note to itself. So for example, a dotted whole note is equal to a whole and a half note, or 3 half notes. A dotted half note is equal to 3 quarter notes, a dotted quarter to 3 8th notes, and so on. To obtain other rhythms, I need to use ties, which combine the value of notes. To obtain a note that is 5 quarters long, I would tie a whole note to a quarter note, or a dotted half note to a half note. I could also create a note that is 5/8 long by tying a dotted quarter note to a quarter note. This is the system of division and subdivision that we use to depict the rhythm of our music. I can combine these notes to create the rhythm of melodies. Yet I find that regardless of the rhythm of a piece of music, there's always a larger pattern governing my rhythm. For example, in this piece, it seems that the rhythm is grouped into 3 quarter note beats. This pattern is notated by something called a time signature, which looks like this. In a time signature, the top number tells you how many beats there are per bar. The bottom number is a code for the type of beat, 1 being a whole note, 2 a half, 4 a quarter, 8 an eighth, 16 a 16th, and so on. Here are some examples of time signatures and their corresponding bar structures. Here's an example of a line of rhythm in 4/2, and an example in 2/4, and an example in 3/1. The time signature only restricts the structure, not the rhythm itself. For example, in each of these lines of rhythm, I can split each beat of the measure into smaller note values, or I can combine notes or beats into larger note values. In the end, we get an interesting rhythm within the bar structure notated by the time signature. It may seem that we have an endless combination of seemingly unrelated time signatures at our disposal, 5/2, 11/16, 14/1. But that's not entirely the case. Most time signatures fit into one of 3 families of meter: simple, compound, and irregular, which we'll cover in the next lesson.